Chapter 225. The shop owner was a tall and strong old beastman. Even in the cold winter, this old beastman only wore thin clothes, and his coarse skin covered his lush body. He rested lazily in the shop. There were many kinds of strange flowers and plants placed everywhere in the shop. Each of these strange flowers and plants had a different color, and the shop was filled with a refreshing fragrance. After Han Shuo walked in, he just glanced at the old beastman and continued to wander among the flowers and plants. He carefully identified these strange flowers and plants, looking for what he needed. In Chu Kanglin's memory, there was a paragraph related to alchemy. It was obtained after Chu Kanglin killed a cultivator who was an alchemist and took his alchemy technique for himself. There was a period of time when Chu Kanglin spent a lot of time studying alchemy techniques. Chu Kanglin even refined a few furnaces of alchemy pills by himself according to the alchemy technique. However, in addition to the alchemy furnace and alchemy technique, the most important thing in alchemy was the materials needed. The more precious the elixir, the rarer the materials needed. Many of them were spiritual objects between heaven and earth. If one wanted to refine the elixir, they must first have enough materials. In the world that Han Shuo originally lived in, all the famous mountains and rivers had gradually become tourist attractions because of the serious pollution. Some precious medicinal herbs had long been mined out. Even with Chu Kanglin's remarkable ability to fly in the sky and burrow into the ground, it took him a year or two to collect the materials for a furnace of energy-gathering pill. It was precisely because of the scarcity of materials and the fact that Chu Kanglin was not a very patient person that he finally gave up using elixir to enhance his strength. However, the memory of alchemy was still deeply imprinted in the depths of his memory. This time, the plant with golden leaves and stalactite-like roots in front of the old beastman's shop attracted Han Shuo's attention. After Han Shuo carefully examined it and carefully looked at the strange plant according to the method in his memory, he finally confirmed that this strange plant only grew in caves with natural stalactites. It absorbed the stone marrow inside for hundreds of years and gathered the yin qi of heaven and earth to form the golden marrow grass. The golden marrow grass was cold in nature and was a natural treasure of the great yin. Together with some other spiritual objects, it could be used to refine the nirvana pill, which could expand the bones and meridians of a mortal. The body would undergo an earth-shattering transformation, becoming a body suitable for cultivation. There was also a small tree that was bright red like a ruby. It was full of vermilion fruits. The bright red fruits were round and crystal clear. Under the illumination of the sunlight, they shone with a faint red light, like a few miniature suns that were dazzling. When Han Shuo carefully examined them, he confirmed that they were actually fire attribute treasures, the blazing fruit. Cultivators who practiced fire attribute cultivation methods or devil cultivators could directly consume this blazing fruit and use their own methods to channel the enormous power of the sun, greatly improving their cultivation in a short period of time. However, if one did not practice fire attribute cultivation methods and consumed the blazing fruit by mistake, they would not be able to withstand the fire power contained within it. They would be burned by the power of the blazing fruit, and when they turned into charcoal, the spirit power of the blazing fruit would slowly dissipate between heaven and earth. Apart from the golden marrow grass and the blazing fruit, this shop also had dragonfly fruit, 100-year vine heart, extreme frost grass, and other rare items. They were all precious materials that some pill refiners needed. When Han Shuo discovered these treasures, he naturally wasn't willing to let them go so easily. After a while, Han Shuo arranged all the rare spirit herbs that he recognized in this shop neatly and placed them in front of the old orc's counter. He said with a smile, "Old man, how much do these things cost?" The old orc had been sitting there lazily and had long since seen Han Shuo's actions. He had been observing Han Shuo closely and only stood up unhurriedly when Han Shuo finally placed all the items in front of him. Contrary to Han Shuo's expectations, the tall, strong old orc did not immediately respond to Han Shuo's question about the price of these herbs. Instead, he looked at Han Shuo with some interest and asked Han Shuo in response, "You recognize these things and know what they are used for?" The old orc's voice was hoarse and thick, and sounded a bit awkward when he spoke the human language. His two large nostrils snorted as he spoke, making him look a bit odd. I just thought it was a bit odd and wanted to buy it to study. Han Shuo responded with a smile. The old orc was a bit disappointed when he heard that Han Shuo didn't recognize them either. He said to himself with some self-deprecation, I knew it, so many pill refiners don't recognize them, how would you know what these things are? Pointing at the blazing fruit, the old orc explained to Han Shuo, curious human lad, these things aren't fun. These strange poisonous herbs grow in the barren lands of our home, and no one dares to play with them. For example, this red fruit. Even some ferocious wild beasts will be burned to death if they mistakenly eat this red fruit. Also, if you put your hand on the branches and leaves of these strange little flowers, you'll feel a bone-piercing chill. Whoever eats them will be frozen into a block of ice. You're not a pill refiner, so it's best if you don't try to mix them carelessly. According to what I know, even some pill refiners have suffered terrible injuries when mixing them. The old orc obviously didn't know the wondrous uses of these natural treasures and instead thought of them as terrifying poisonous herbs. The blazing fruit and extreme frost grass were treasures of extreme heat and cold. Ordinary people would indeed be harmed if they took them, because ordinary people would definitely not be able to digest the spirit power within. It was normal for him to have this kind of misunderstanding. Chuckling lightly, Han Shuo said with a smile, Don't worry, I'm not using these things carelessly. It's just that I know a pretty good pill refiner and he's quite accomplished with some strange herbs. I'm just giving them to others. Of course, I'll remember your reminder and tell them the characteristics of these poisonous herbs. All right then, it was quite difficult for my children to bring these herbs from the faraway barren lands. You can give me 100 gold coins for all of these items. This is a very fair price, and there are some pill refiners who are very interested and willing to pay a large price for them. The old orc obviously didn't know what it meant for these items to fall into the hands of a knowledgeable person like Han Shuo. 100 gold coins wasn't even enough to buy a single leaf from one of the herbs. On account of the old orc's kind reminder earlier, plus the possibility that these herbs might be delivered to him in the future, Han Shuo generously threw down 500 gold coins and said, Many thanks to the old man for your reminder. Your kind reminder is worth 400 gold coins, otherwise my friend may have run into great trouble. If you have more of these herbs, feel free to bring them over from the barren lands. I'll be sure to pay a large price for them when I have the time. Oh, esteemed guest, your generosity will definitely be rewarded. Thank you very much. The old orc excitedly accepted a bag of 500 gold coins. His gaze when he looked at Han Shuo was completely different as he happily praised him. Wait a moment. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out from outside the door. Then, a beautiful woman that even Han Shuo and the other two couldn't help but sigh in admiration walked in leisurely. Her tall and slender body was wrapped in a light purple dress. Her long brown hair flowed down like a waterfall, and below her slender phoenix eyebrows were a pair of limpid eyes. Further down was a delicate nose, small crimson-red lips, tender and smooth skin, and an oval face. All of these were the elements that a beautiful woman should have. She looked to be only in her early 20s, but her entire being exuded the air of someone who held great power and had experienced great things. Although she didn't purposefully reveal it, her entire being naturally exuded a disdainful aura, as if she could easily decide the life and death of others. Hi, beautiful, are you talking to me? After a loud whistle, Dark Dragon Gilbert looked at the woman excitedly and said lightly, Not you. She flicked a glance at Gilbert and responded faintly. She didn't look at Gilbert again and walked directly towards Han Shuo. When she arrived in front of Han Shuo, she extended a slender finger and pointed at the extreme frost grass. Her limpid eyes looked at Han Shuo and said, Can you give this poisonous grass to me? Shaking his head, Han Shuo smiled faintly and said, I'm sorry, I can't. After being deflated, the beautiful woman looked at Han Shuo with a dumbfounded expression, as if she hadn't thought that Han Shuo would refuse so straightforwardly. Her phoenix eyebrows furrowed beautifully and she opened her mouth again. I can pay 100 gold coins for this poisonous grass. Shaking his head again, Han Shuo also smiled faintly and still firmly refused. I'm sorry, I'm not selling. After being deflated twice, She clearly knew that she wouldn't be able to obtain this extreme frost grass. She looked deeply at Han Shuo and said disdainfully, "A man with no poise." It looks like Emily's words weren't all that detailed. When these words were spoken, it was Han Shuo's turn to be stunned. He stared closely at the woman and asked tentatively, "Your mistress Cecilia?" Nodding her head with a cold expression, Cecilia raised her head to look at Han Shuo and said with a haughty expression, "That's me. May I ask, Mr. Brian, what will it take for you to give this poisonous grass to me?" "I won't give it to you no matter what," Han Shuo responded, then said with a smile, "It's very nice to meet you, Mistress Cecilia. Goodbye." When these words were spoken, Han Shuo didn't look at Cecilia again and walked around her, directly walking out of the shop. Chapter 226. Honorable Master, I don't think this is your style. Why are you suddenly so cold to a beauty? On the way back, Gilbert had a puzzled expression. First of all, I have a use for that poisonous grass, so I definitely won't give it to her. In addition, this Cecilia thinks that her position is higher than mine, so she's swaggering around in front of me. This kind of attitude really disgusts me, so she can forget about getting the poisonous grass from my hands. According to Emily, Cecilia was a priest, and she also majored in pharmaceutics. Her attainments in pharmaceutics were extremely high. Although she wasn't the main combatant in battle, an expert like Cecilia, who majored in both, could play a crucial role. Such a character could allow warriors and mages in battle to quickly recover their physical strength. Even if they were injured, they could use some priest's magic and some potions to quickly treat them, so that the warriors' and mages' injuries could be stabilized, so that they could join the battlefield faster. After leaving the old orc's shop, Han Shuo didn't continue to stay outside, and went straight back to his base camp. Phoebe and Emily sat lazily on two wide chairs in the middle of the courtyard as they bathed in the crimson glow of the evening sun. They were happily chatting about something. As soon as Han Shuo walked into the courtyard, the two women's four eyes all turned to look at Han Shuo. After going through a day, the two women's expressions were natural, without the awkwardness in the morning. Under the illumination of the red evening glow, the two charming faces were bright red, gorgeous beyond compare. Their beautiful eyes were also full of affection, like a young wife at home looking forward to the return of her husband. In an instant, Han Shuo's heart was filled with a warm emotion. In a trance, Han Shuo felt that at this moment, the two women were so beautiful. If the truth was revealed, and the two women could still live in harmony, it would be a pleasant thing for any man. "What are you thinking about, standing there with a silly smile?" Only when facing Han Shuo would Phoebe be so easy to get close to, and her tone would be much softer. "No, nothing." Beautiful wishes could only be wishful thinking for now. From Phoebe's personality, she wasn't a woman who would easily compromise. Therefore, Han Shuo naturally wouldn't reveal any clues to avoid angering her and causing trouble. "Brian, I'm afraid I'll have to leave first this time. I've just received a mission with Sister Cecilia. I can't stay in the Valley of Sunshine any longer." Emily looked at Han Shuo reluctantly and said apologetically. Han Shuo was first taken aback, then fell silent. He understood that Emily, as a senior member of the Dark Mantle, had many things that she needed to do. She couldn't stay in the same place forever. Nodding, Han Shuo revealed an understanding smile and said, "I understand. It's not suitable for us to stay in the Valley of Sunshine for the time being. I'm also preparing to leave." Under Phoebe and Emily's astonishment, Han Shuo repeated to Emily and Phoebe what he'd said to Trunks and the others today, weighing the pros and cons in detail. Han Shuo's decision wasn't wrong, so he quickly received the approval of Phoebe and Emily. "Then what do we do next?" Phoebe's beautiful eyes focused on Han Shuo as she asked softly. "You're in charge of the Buzzed Merchant Guild, so I don't think you can stay in the Valley of Sunshine forever. You can go attend to your matters first. I'll take care of some matters of my own, and then head to the capital to find you. Trunks has enough gold to support him. I think with his abilities and connections he'll be able to better develop his forces in the outskirts of the Valley of Sunshine. Alright, it looks like we'll need to split up for now. Here, this is what you need. The Valley of Sunshine is really a good place. You'll be able to find whatever resources you need as long as you have enough patience. Phoebe took out many strange ores and some rare metals from her space ring and placed them in the courtyard. She then looked at Han Shuo with a smile. These were all the basic materials that Han Shuo needed for the dwarves to forge weapons. There was also a bit that Han Shuo wanted to keep for his personal use, planning on refining a few small magical weapons when he had the time. Phoebe had already given Han Shuo the materials for refining the wood and water elite zombies. Now that all of the materials for refining the wood elite zombie had been gathered, Han Shuo could head to the forest troll's holy land after returning to the dark forest this time and plant the wood elite zombie in the place of extreme wood, so that the wood elite zombie could be born as soon as possible. Alright, Trunks, pay attention to Odysseus and the others. I don't know how long they'll need to consider, but I think with your familiarity with the Valley of Sunshine, you'll certainly have a way to contact them at any time. I've already told them the situation. Whether they want to join the Soul Destroyers or not is up to them. Han Shuo thought for a moment and said to Trunks, "Don't worry, I know what to do. The Valley of Sunshine isn't too far from the Dark Forest. It won't be too much trouble for the two of us to contact each other," Trunks said with a smile. On the way back, Han Shuo and Trunks had already told each other about their points of contact in the Valley of Sunshine and the Dark Forest. Han Shuo didn't tell Trunks about the existence of the Cemetery of Death, but left a mark at the waterfall where he often trained to make it easier for Trunks to contact him. The group of 5 discussed the details in detail for a while before Han Shuo's group of 4 left the Valley of Sunshine under the cover of the night. With Gilbert around, the 4 didn't need to leave through the exit and left without making a sound. Only Emily had to leave with Cecilia and temporarily stay in the Valley of Sunshine for a day to pass on some things to Loriton. After leaving the Valley of Sunshine, the 4 immediately split up. According to Han Shuo's instructions, Gilbert carried Phoebe on his back and flew directly to Zajoski City. He told Phoebe to use the transportation matrix in Zajoski City to safely return to the capital of the Empire and then meet up with Han Shuo at the Cemetery of Death. After bidding farewell to Han Shuo, Trunks burrowed into the depths of the forest alone and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. After the 3 left, Han Shuo swaggered in the direction of the dark forest, neither hurrying nor slow. He didn't even use the art of the demonic ninth heavens. Han Shuo planned on exposing his whereabouts when he left the Valley of Sunshine this time in order to attract the attention of the Church of Lights Ferguson. This was to prevent the latter from not knowing that he had left and not letting Trunks off afterwards. On the main road leading out of the Valley of Sunshine, Han Shuo's expression was relaxed and at ease. He didn't ride any means of transportation, and his tall figure traveled alone under the bright moonlight, not the slightest bit aware that he was about to become a target. At such a crucial time, the glorious sun, Tanai, and the other 4 powers would certainly send people to patrol the area to prevent any accidents from happening. When Han Shuo wanted to expose himself, everything seemed very easy. Using the 3 Yin demons to spy on him, Han Shuo easily discovered that several groups of people were paying attention to his whereabouts. When a person hurriedly spoke a few words and quickly left with his companions, rushing in the direction of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band, Han Shuo understood that the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band would arrive before long. That Ferguson of the Church of Light would certainly drop everything at hand and eliminate the most dangerous, hidden danger first. Now that Han Shuo had reached the Bloodlust realm, he had the 3 Yin demons monitoring everything, the Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie at his disposal, and the extraordinarily fast art of the demonic ninth heavens. Han Shuo was confident that he could calmly escape from any encirclement. Therefore, from beginning to end, Han Shuo appeared very relaxed. He walked unhurriedly in the direction of the dark forest, waiting for Ferguson's group to arrive and then leisurely leave the Valley of Sunshine amidst their pursuit. He wanted them to understand that he had already left the Valley of Sunshine. It was the middle of winter, and the snow-covered mountain range presented a world of ice and snow. Under the bright moonlight, the sky didn't seem too dark even at night. The reflection of the moonlight and the snow made the silver-white world appear so quiet and beautiful. Under the moonlight, Han Shuo's lonely figure drew a long shadow on the snow-covered ground. In such a cold night, even some greedy merchants weren't willing to travel. Therefore, even on the most crowded roads, Han Shuo didn't run into a single merchant caravan. After leaving the main road, Han Shuo continued forward in the vast Kurlin mountain range. After Han Shuo had walked for more than an hour, he arrived at an even more remote forest. Through the Yin demon's surveillance, Han Shuo discovered a cruel atrocity. A small caravan of a few dozen people was being madly ravaged by ruthless bandits in the middle of the night. There weren't many bandits, only a dozen or so of them. However, each and every one of them was incomparably savage. Each and every one of them yelled wildly, ignoring the pleas of the merchants. While plundering the goods, they grinned hideously as they slaughtered the merchants. Several young women were stripped naked in the middle of the night in a world of ice and snow. They were forced onto the carriages and next to the big trees to be raped. Their helpless and painful screams made one's heart bleed. Around the caravan's carriage were several strong men dressed like mercenaries. They'd all been decapitated and their blood had dried, dyeing the ground black. It looked like they were the first wave of guards to be killed. It was obvious that this small caravan had thought that they wouldn't be targeted by bandits in the middle of the night and that they were taking a secluded path. That was why they'd taken the risk to travel at night. How could they have known that they'd misjudged and encountered a small group of bandits, resulting in such a cruel situation? Han Shuo wasn't a very kind person. He'd once commanded the forest troll to rob, but he'd never killed the innocent, nor would he commit such atrocities like raping women. As the saying went, even bandits had their own principles. Han Shuo felt that he'd done a pretty good job. However, the merchants had already offered up all their goods and knelt on the ground, kowtowing and begging, but they still had their heads chopped off by the ferocious bandits. This scene was intolerable to Han Shuo. The bandits' despicable and unruly methods completely infuriated Han Shuo. Without any greetings or superfluous words, Han Shuo, who'd used the Yin demons to witness the atrocities, broke through the air. Because of his anger, his blood and chi surged wildly. A thick, murderous aura followed Han Shuo's figure and descended on the scene. The gloomy Han Shuo's eyes were blood red. His cold face was frighteningly ferocious, and the murderous aura around him couldn't help but surge. He slashed at the neck of a bandit who was pressing down on a woman and raping her. The left palm that slashed out was as black jade, like a cold, sharp knife. With a "pu" sound, the bandit's head was sent flying far away. Blood sprayed everywhere from the headless neck. An extremely terrifying scream came from the mouth of the dead bandit. The woman, who'd been suffering in pain, suddenly saw that the person on top of her had been decapitated. Blood sprayed all over her from the severed neck. She couldn't help but scream. "For you! How dare you meddle in our business? Don't you know that our boss is the butcher?" A bearded bandit, who'd been about to kill a merchant, suddenly turned his head and roared. It was indeed Butcher Gustav's men. Of all the bandit factions in the Valley of Sunshine, only Butcher Gustav's bandits would be so cruel and unruly. There was no need to waste words with them. Han Shuo directly expressed his attitude with his actions. With a gloomy face, Han Shuo's murderous aura was terrifyingly thick. In front of these cruel bandits, he displayed the vicious side of a demonic cultivator. Han Shuo directly rushed towards this person. Before he could react, the violent Han Shuo's fist blasted down like a sharp iron awl. The bearded bandit's chest was directly pierced through by this punch. When Han Shuo pulled out his bloody fist, there was a huge bloody hole in his chest. Even his shattered internal organs could be clearly seen. Han Shuo's heart was filled with rage as he panted heavily. He was like a demon king who only knew how to kill. He used his ruthless coldness and perverse physical strength to crush the bandits one by one. With a rip of his hands, he tore a bandit in half. With a punch, the bandit's bones were all shattered and his flesh exploded. Hot blood sprayed all over Han Shuo's body. A gust of bloody whirlwind blew past, and a group of more than 10 bandits were all turned into scattered pieces of flesh. Compared to the innocent people they'd killed, their fates were even more terrible. Not a single corpse was whole. When Han Shuo discovered Ferguson and Maxine's figures through the Yin demons, He suppressed the bloodlust in his heart and continued walking in the direction of the dark forest with heavy steps. He didn't linger a second longer in this place that reeked of blood. Chapter 227. A wide river blocked the way. The surging river water flowed all the way to the low-lying area. Han Shuo panted heavily as he stood in front of a towering ancient tree. He did his best to suppress his frenzied state of mind. His blood-red eyes were wide open as he turned his head to look at the two approaching figures. The two figures slowly approached under the bright night sky. Ferguson was carrying Maxine with magic, and they appeared in Han Shuo's line of sight like two drifting clouds. "You finally arrived. I've waited for some time." Fiendish aura churned all over his body as streaks of crimson light encircled Han Shuo's body. This was the strange energy that his body had naturally absorbed from the bandits' fear and resentment just before their deaths. Although your methods were cruel, you saved those people. This means that you're not a heartless person. I've already investigated you and know that you're not from the Calamity Church. However, some of the things you've grasped are too dangerous to this world. Therefore, I'll capture you and imprison you in the Church of Light forever. However, I won't take your life. Ferguson's body flew to the top of a tree branch as he looked at Han Shuo calmly. The elven-divine archer Maxine's pretty figure landed gracefully. She knocked an arrow and took aim at Han Shuo. A sense of danger suddenly leapt into Han Shuo's heart and he couldn't help but cast a few more glances at Maxine. The Calamity Church has nothing to do with me. Moreover, I have no way of using the knowledge I possess to transform large numbers of dark creatures. I'm telling you clearly this time, I won't join the Calamity Church, and the Calamity Church is my enemy. But if you continue to tangle with me, I don't care if your reputation is good or bad. As long as you threaten me, I won't hesitate to kill you. Suppressing the crazy thoughts in his heart, Han Shuo's expression was sinister as he spoke viciously. Ferguson shook his head and said resolutely, "I'm sorry. Not killing you is already the biggest concession I can make. I definitely can't let you go, because the things you've grasped are far too dangerous for us." It seemed like there was no way to back down. Grinning wildly, Han Shuo nodded. "Since this is the case, then there's nothing more to say. If you dare make a move, I won't be lenient." Before he lost his reason, Han Shuo suddenly soared into the air and transformed into a streak of bloody light, flying towards the dark forest. Maxine shot out an arrow that she'd long since prepared. It was like a bolt of lightning streaking through the air, piercing through the air with an ear-piercing whistle. The arrow followed Han Shuo like a shadow, as if it wouldn't stop until it saw blood. Grand Magus Ferguson wasn't idle either. Just as Han Shuo's body shot through the air, he waved the staff in his hand and a beam of blinding light shot towards Han Shuo like a laser cannon. The surging energy made Han Shuo realize just how dangerous this light was. Han Shuo had been standing in the air when he felt the attack coming from behind him. His forward-charging body froze in midair as the demon's lair edge moved according to his will, flying out of his sleeve to meet Maxine's arrow. Han Shuo activated his magical yuan and the murderous aura around his body quickly condensed on his right arm. Bloody light shot out from Han Shuo's right arm in the blink of an eye. Violent energy surged like a great river beneath his body, blasting towards the beam of light under the augmentation of magical yuan. An ear-splitting explosion rang out, accompanied by blinding white light and bloody light, intersecting beautifully in the night sky. It was as if a ball of brilliant fireworks had been released, possessing a strange, bewitching beauty. Han Shuo's figure fell straight down amidst the moving splendor. He fell into the great river with a splash and was instantly swallowed by the surging waters. Ferguson brought Maxine along with him through magic as the two hovered in the air above the place where Han Shuo had fallen. They gazed at the surging waters, not knowing what to do for the time being. After waiting in the air for a while, Han Shuo's figure had disappeared without a trace amidst the surging waters. This greatly surprised Ferguson and Maxine. Judging from the strength he displayed that day, he shouldn't have died so easily. Why hasn't he surfaced yet? It's impossible for him to not breathe for a long time. Ferguson looked around in astonishment and said with some doubt, "He might have died already, Otherwise he would have left the water long ago. No one can stop breathing. Maxine was also perplexed and speculated with some uncertainty. If he's not dead, then he must have been washed downhill by the current. Come, let's go take a look downhill. After waiting for a while, Ferguson confirmed that Han Shuo was no longer here and flew towards the direction of the river with Maxine. Dark Grand Magus Edwin and the female alchemist Belinda walked out from the shadows of a large tree after Ferguson and Maxine had disappeared. It's a good thing we were far away, otherwise that old fox Ferguson would have discovered us. It looks like that Brian must have run into big trouble. Edwin said with lingering fear. He was attacked by Ferguson and Maxine at the same time, so he must have fallen into the water. He's probably dead since he hasn't come out for so long. Belinda guessed the same thing as Maxine as she gazed at the surging waters. Shaking his head with a faint smile, Edwin said with certainty, "No, he's definitely not dead." The onlooker sees the game more clearly than the onlooker. I noticed a few details when they were exchanging blows. Although Brian's weapon also fell into the river after colliding with Maxine's arrow, its trajectory was stable. According to what you said before, his weapon should still be under his control. This means that Brian didn't faint or die after falling into the river, otherwise he wouldn't be able to control his weapon. Belinda thought back with astonishment after Edwin's words and agreed, yes, he must still be alive. Haha, the stronger he is and the more he can protect himself, the more advantageous it is for us. As long as he's not dead, we'll have a chance to obtain him. He'll definitely appear again. We need to understand everything about him before then. We must obtain this person. Edwin cackled lowly and left with Belinda. The surging river was incomparably wide. A figure shot into the air like a sharp arrow from a place far away from where Han Shuo had fallen into the water. After ascertaining his direction in the air, he shot towards the dark forest like a bolt of lightning. Edwin's judgment had been quite accurate. The killing aura that had condensed on Han Shuo's right arm had completely blocked Ferguson's blinding beam of light when he'd faced the two's previous attacks. His body hadn't been harmed at all. He'd already used his consciousness to summon the demon's lair edge into his hand when he'd entered the river and then dashed wildly through the river, avoiding Ferguson and returning to the air. Han Shuo had originally planned on fighting Ferguson and Maxine, but Edwin had exposed himself in his eagerness to see what was going on and was discovered by one of the three Yin demons. This caused Han Shuo to give up on the idea and take the opportunity to dive into the river and create the illusion of drowning, taking advantage of this opportunity to leave that place of trouble. With Han Shuo's current strength, he was confident that he could easily retreat with the help of the Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie, as well as his magical yuan and necromancy magic. Although he might not be able to defeat Ferguson and Maxine, he was confident that the two would be unable to stop him. However, Edwin and Belinda's appearance forced Han Shuo to give up on the idea of fighting. To Han Shuo, these two from the Calamity Church were just as hard to deal with. If they ambushed him while he was fighting Ferguson and Maxine, it would be a very unpleasant experience. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Han Shuo felt that there was no benefit in staying. He finally decided to temporarily avoid them and use magical yuan to leave through the river. The last time he'd gone to the Cemetery of Death with Fanny's group, it had taken more than 10 days. However, the existence of the art of the demonic ninth heavens had saved Han Shuo a great deal of time. He'd only spent a day and a night flying through the air, arriving at the Cemetery of Death on the evening of the second day. Although he'd adjusted his breathing 3 times along the way, Han Shuo had still expended a great deal of magical yuan when he arrived at the Cemetery of Death. Han Shuo had no choice but to adjust his breathing and recover again. The 3 Yin demons had been placed outside the Cemetery of Death by Han Shuo to wait for Dark Dragon Gilbert. Han Shuo closed his eyes and rested for the night, recovering his spirit the next day. The Cemetery of Death was enveloped by a strong boundary, unable to feel the light of the sun or moon at any time. It was shrouded in a dark and cold environment all year round. White bones piled up all over the ground, making this place a paradise for the dead. Seeing that Gilbert still hadn't returned, Han Shuo couldn't help but take out some of the materials that Phoebe had given him and study them one by one. Apart from some of the materials that Han Shuo had asked Phoebe to collect to forge weapons for the dwarves, he also planned on refining some magical treasures with special effects. The demon infant had already taken form, and Han Shuo's magical yuan had reached the bloodlust realm. He now had the ability to refine magical treasures. This time, not only did Han Shuo want to refine the demon's lair edge, he also wanted to add some good items with special effects to it. Chapter 228. For the next 2 days, Han Shuo stayed in the cemetery of death. Han Shuo sat cross-legged amidst the white bones, the demon's lair edge floating in front of his chest. Bolts of blazing lightning curled around the demon's lair edge. Han Shuo held his breath and stared calmly at the demon's lair edge. From time to time, he would send out beams of demonic fire from his hands, or bite his finger and drip a few drops of blood essence into the demon's lair edge. He would slowly use the demon infant in his heart to guide the magical yuan, nourishing the demon's lair edge over and over again. Han Shuo held some rare metal ores in his left and right hands. 2 balls of blazing red flames submerged the center of Han Shuo's palms. The scorching demonic fire carried a terrifyingly high temperature and slowly melted the incomparably hard metal ores, turning them into a multicolored liquid that fell into the demon's lair edge floating in front of his chest. Before Han Shuo formed the demon infant, he didn't have the ability to refine demonic treasures. Therefore, the basic shape of the demon's lair edge had been requested from the famed dwarven craftsman. The dwarves had mixed the sharpest metals into the demon's lair edge according to Han Shuo's wishes. It took a few days and nights to complete the demon's lair edge. Reality proved that the demon's lair edge that Han Shuo had spent a huge amount of money and the dwarves had painstakingly forged was indeed incomparably sharp. Ordinary metal weapons would definitely break into 2 pieces when cut by the demon's lair edge. However, a true demonic treasure wasn't just enough to be sharp. It also needed some special effects to be considered a treasure. The demon's lair edge was a great weapon in Chu Kanglin's memories. After it was truly refined, a demonic cultivator in the bloodlust realm would be able to unleash its extraordinary effects when using it. The word, slayer, in the demon's lair edge indicated that its effects were inseparable from slaughter. This was indeed the case. When the demon's lair edge was successfully refined and a demonic cultivator in the bloodthirsty realm used the demon's lair edge to kill, the murderous aura that naturally surrounded the demonic cultivator would absorb the fear and resentment of the dead. If the demonic cultivator had the demon's lair edge in their hands at this time, the demon's lair edge would be able to absorb the fear and resentment of the deceased and store them all within the demon's lair edge. When the demon's lair edge absorbed enough of this strange energy, the fear and resentment would naturally form a demonic soul within the demon's lair edge, turning it into a peerless weapon with its own consciousness. As the wielder killed more and more people, the demon's lair edge would absorb more and more negative energy. When the demonic soul finally formed, the wielder could use the demon's lair edge, this peerless weapon, to battle with others. Just the enormous amount of killing intent within the demon's lair edge alone would be enough to cause others to lose their mind, and the demonic soul within the demon's lair edge would destroy all their confidence. Apart from that, when the demon's lair edge became a great weapon and possessed a demonic soul of its own, it would also possess some other inconceivable uses. It could even be used to refine Han Shuo's avatar, which would be able to continuously evolve like Han Shuo's main body and grasp even more terrifying power. However, in order for such a powerful weapon to take shape, the number of strange materials required exceeded Han Shuo's imagination. Apart from the various strange metals that the dwarves had mixed in at the beginning, Han Shuo was currently continuously fusing even more rare materials into the demon's lair edge, using his magical yuan and the demon infant to refine it bit by bit, infusing even more of his blood essence into the demon's lair edge, ensuring that it could take shape as quickly as possible. The process of refining the demon's lair edge wasn't something that could be done in one go. It was a process of slowly fusing with itself, using magical yuan and the demon infant's blood essence to refine the demon's lair edge bit by bit. It definitely wouldn't take a day or 2. In these 2 days, Han Shuo was only slowly fusing the materials that the demon's lair edge required, then using his magical yuan, demon infant, and blood essence to slowly establish a more intimate connection with the demon's lair edge bit by bit, building the foundation of the demon's lair edge. In this way, when the demon's lair edge wasn't out, it could transform into a rice-sized ball and hide within Han Shua's blood essence that was nourishing the demon infant, continuing to provide it with the energy it needed to refine the demon's lair edge. When Han Shua was attacking and killing, the demon's lair edge could instantly escape and instinctively absorb the energy of the dead while Han Shua was killing. Until one day, when the demon's lair edge had absorbed enough energy from the dead and formed a demonic soul within its handle, it would truly take shape and become a peerless weapon, a terrifying demonic treasure. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. When Han Shua hid the demon's lair edge within his body and slowly adjusted his breathing to recover his vitality, he discovered traces of Gilbert's return through the 3 demon's observation. Returning to his senses from his cross-legged position, Han Shua stood up and took out the Eye of Darkness to help Gilbert open the boundary. When Gilbert came in, Han Shua discovered that Gilbert was sparkling with divine light, his face full of lewd laughter. "What's wrong? Look at how you're smiling. With your flying speed, 2 days and 1 night should be enough for you to return to the cemetery of death. Why are you taking so long?" Han Shua questioned as he stared at Gilbert in astonishment. "Heh, I'm just a bit late, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I've already safely sent Miss Phoebe to Zajowski City, you can rest assured." Gilbert's smile was indescribably lewd, making Han Shua feel uncomfortable. Looking suspiciously at the dark dragon, a thought suddenly leapt into Han Shua's mind when he discovered that the dark dragon's lewd smile was a bit fatigued. Han Shua couldn't help but exclaim, "You didn't take advantage of the situation to spend money on prostitutes in Zajowski City, did you?" Gilbert wasn't the least bit embarrassed when he heard these words. He nodded with a lewd laugh and said, "Honored master, you're really smart. My grandfather was right, the taste of women is really wonderful. Those 2 chicks were really flirtatious, they kept tormenting me for an entire night. That's why I was delayed." As expected, the dark dragon race was famous for their lewdness. Just like the forest troll's instinct to pillage, lust was also an instinct of the dark dragon race. This was a deeply rooted racial trait that no one could change. Han Shua could understand the dark dragon's actions, but he was a bit surprised to see the dark dragon's fatigued appearance. It said that you dark dragons are famous for your tyrannical strength in this aspect. Could it be that 2 women in 1 night have made you so tired? Honored master, this is the first time I've done 2 women for a long time in 1 night, and I've even flown all the way back. Isn't this battle record impressive enough? It said that human men are very weak in this area. They definitely can't have such a powerful battle record as mine." Gilbert puffed out his chest and said proudly. Shaking his head in disdain, Han Shua said, "If it were me, I could do it for as long as I wanted. Not only would my body be fine, it would even be stronger." "You keep bragging. Although you're very strong, master, you're still a human. Humans definitely can't compare to our dark dragon race in this area." Gilbert first said disdainfully to Han Shua, and then proudly affirmed it. It seemed that in his mind, this concept was deeply ingrained and absolutely could not be changed easily. Han Shua's words weren't empty. With his bloodthirsty demonic cultivation level, coupled with some evil demonic arts, he could indeed remain standing. He could even use demonic arts to harvest yin and replenish his yang to replenish his own vital energy. In this way, not only would he not harm himself at all, but he could also improve his strength through sex. It was very magical. Some demonic secret techniques were divided into collecting yin to replenish yang, collecting yang to replenish yin. There was also a kind of double cultivation method called delightful zen, which was beneficial to both parties. These demonic secret techniques were fully understood by Han Shua after he obtained all of Chu Kanglin's memories. Before today, Han Shua didn't pay much attention to them. Now, because of the matter with Gilbert, he suddenly remembered that perhaps he could use Delightful Zen's double cultivation method to bring benefits to both parties when he dual cultivated with Emily. Therefore, when he thought of those evil secret techniques, Han Shua fell into a short period of silence. He carefully recalled those secret techniques in his mind and slowly considered the possibilities. Some of these secret techniques didn't require a practitioner's inner yuan or demonic yuan. They only needed to grasp some special techniques and train one's body to achieve that goal. There were also a few more powerful ones that required the activation of both inner yuan and demonic yuan. However, only a little bit of inner yuan and demonic yuan was required to successfully deploy them, achieving the miraculous effect of replenishing one's yin and replenishing one's yin. Lecherous dragon, tell me honestly, if you frequently do this kind of thing with your dark dragon race's body, won't it cause harm to your body? Han Shuo suddenly said to Gilbert after thinking for a while. Of course, no matter what race, if this kind of thing is excessively carried out, it will cause harm to the body. Us dark dragons are no exception. Especially when we need to evolve, we must put an end to this kind of thing. Otherwise, the damage to the body will be even greater. However, for us dark dragons, this is our nature and it is very difficult to control. There are often some dark dragons who can't control themselves and indulge in the process of evolution. Not only will they fail to evolve, but their rank will also drop. This is not strange. Dark Dragon Gilbert answered Han Shuo's question honestly. Creatures like giant dragons were the most powerful super-rank magical beasts among magical beasts. However, there was also a strict division of ranks among super-rank magical beasts due to the difference in strength. In general, super-rank magical beasts were divided into 5 ranks, which was completely opposite to the division of ordinary magical beasts. The strongest super-rank magical beasts were rank 5, and those that were just born were rank 1. For example, Dark Dragon Gilbert hadn't evolved even once. He was still a rank 1 magical beast when he was just born, and belonged to the lowest rank among super-rank magical beasts. He only possessed some of the innate characteristics and offensive abilities of his race. Haha, you little lecherous dragon, oh little lecherous dragon. You've been with me for so long, but Master has never given you anything good. This time, I'll make it up to you in one go. I'll teach you a miraculous martial technique so that you won't have to worry about the consequences in the future. Not only will your body not be weak in the slightest when you visit prostitutes, your strength will also grow stronger and stronger. It won't matter even when you evolve. Han Shuo looked at the black dragon and laughed strangely. I don't believe it. How can there be such a mysterious martial technique in this world? This is absolutely not true. Don't try to lie to me. Dark Dragon Gilbert obviously didn't believe Han Shuo's words and shook his head nonchalantly. You'll definitely believe it. Han Shuo walked towards Gilbert and placed his hand on his shoulder. A stream of magical yuan flowed along Gilbert's body and slowly flowed towards his lower abdomen. What is this? Dark Dragon Gilbert jumped in fright and said in shock, why does it feel like a small snake has drilled into my body? Stay still and don't move. Master is inspecting the structure of your body. Han Shuo shouted softly and stopped Gilbert's strange movements. The stream of magical yuan then followed Han Shuo's thoughts and traveled once around Gilbert's lower abdomen. He discovered that the structure of Dark Dragon Gilbert's transformed body was indeed a bit different from his own. After thinking for a moment, Han Shuo carefully recalled a secret method of harvesting yin to replenish yang and tried to move it around Gilbert's body. After half an hour, Han Shuo dripped a drop of blood essence into Gilbert's body, lifted his clothes, and dropped it into Dark Dragon Gilbert's navel. He then shouted in a low voice, try to control the snake according to its trajectory and slowly guide it into your navel. As long as you can do it, you will be able to use this mysterious martial technique in the future. After saying this, Han Shuo released his hand from Dark Dragon Gilbert's shoulder and looked at Dark Dragon Gilbert with sparkling eyes. He watched as sweat beaded on his forehead and nervously followed Han Shuo's instructions with a face full of fear and trepidation. However, he still couldn't grasp the essence of the technique. At this time, Han Shuo had no way to guide him. He had to grasp the knack of the technique himself so that he could use it proficiently in the future. The drops of blood essence that entered his navel were like a seed that could turn the tides of the universe. They could provide a hiding place for the magical yuan Han Shuo injected, allowing him to successfully execute the secret method of harvesting yin to replenish yang. Han Shuo had already done everything that could be done for him. However, the structure of his body was different from that of humans after all. Whether or not he could succeed would depend on his own luck. Although it should be possible in theory, Han Shuo wasn't confident in himself and sized him up with some apprehension. After a while, Dark Dragon Gilbert looked at Han Shuo in a fluster and shouted anxiously, "All right, it's in. I did it. The little snake has returned to my navel." Overjoyed, Han Shuo hurriedly asked, "Then how does your body feel right now?" I'm hard, very, very hard." A small tent was propped up under Gilbert's body. He looked down at his lower body, not knowing what to do. He spoke frantically. Hard is good, huh?" Han Shuo laughed heartily and said proudly, "Very good, perverted dragon, you've succeeded." Chapter 229. After spending half a day under Han Shuo's guidance, Dark Dragon Gilbert finally grasped this evil technique of harvesting yin to replenish yang. Gilbert, who was originally in disbelief, slowly started to have doubts as his body continued to transform. However, before he could confirm it, Gilbert did not dare believe that such a martial technique could have such a miraculous effect. Remember, you can only steal a bit of yin energy at a time. Too much and you'll die. Han Shuo cautiously reminded after Gilbert had completely grasped the technique. If this evil technique of harvesting yin to replenish yang could be used appropriately and only absorb a bit of yin energy from a woman's body at a time, it wouldn't cause too much harm to the woman's body. However, if it was used excessively and absorbed too much yin energy, it would harm the woman's body. In serious cases, it could even cause death. Under Han Shuo's repeated reminders, Gilbert seemed to understand, but not quite. He grumbled, "Got it, it's hard to say if it's useful or not. I'll tell you after I try it." Afterwards, Han Shuo and Gilbert made a trip to the Dwarves' Valley. Leaving Gilbert outside, Han Shuo went in and had a chat with village chief Calvin. He handed over the list of materials needed for forging weapons to Calvin, and only left the valley after the negotiations were concluded. With Gilbert's presence, Han Shuo saved a lot of effort. Riding on Gilbert's back, the two flew towards the depths of the dark forest, towards the holy land where the forest troll lived. After flying for most of the day, Han Shuo and Gilbert arrived at the holy land of the forest troll, the place where the statue of the demon Dadera was worshipped. The forest troll guarding this place all recognized Han Shuo. No one stopped Han Shuo and allowed Han Shuo to enter freely, even shouldering the responsibility of protecting him. Even in the cold winter, the sacred land of the forest trolls in the place of extreme would display a verdant and lush air of spring. Dense vegetation, tall shrubs, and ancient trees that reached into the sky all grew exceptionally strong and healthy. Colorful flowers bloomed all over the sacred mountain valley, and the air was filled with a fresh and mellow fragrance. As far as the eye could see, it was all green and full of vitality. All the plants were so perfectly grown, so unbelievably strong. There were even some exotic flowers and plants that even Han Shuo had never heard of before. Any plant would grow very well in the place of extreme earth. Thick earth yuan qi filled the surroundings, and towering ancient trees covered the horizon. The old branches intertwined with each other, strong and powerful. This was why the holy land of the forest troll could be built on top of these tree trunks. After arriving here, Han Shuo first had some of the surrounding forest troll temporarily evacuate from this area of the holy land. He then leapt into the air and observed the feng shui of the 5 elements from above. He carefully identified the place according to the descriptions in Chu Kanglin's memories before landing on the roots of an ancient tree. This ancient tree was the tallest and most ancient tree in the place of extreme earth. It was more than 10 meters tall, and its dense branches and leaves were all green. It radiated vitality and looked quite old. After staring at the largest ancient tree for a while, Han Shuo finally said apologetically, "I'm sorry, you've occupied the best spot. You'll have to hand over the earth yuan qi you've absorbed bit by bit. I can only sacrifice you." As he spoke, Han Shuo's thoughts moved and a beam of divine light flew out of his body, landing in Han Shuo's palm. Han Shuo then began to dig at the thick roots of the ancient tree without hesitation. "Honored master, do you need my help?" Gilbert volunteered when he saw that Han Shuo had begun to dig at the roots of the ancient tree the size of a small mountain. After thinking for a bit, Han Shuo nodded and stopped what he was doing. He said, "I don't need your help, but you've reminded me that I don't need to do anything myself with the Earth Elite Zombie here." Han Shuo chanted a necromancy incantation as soon as he finished speaking. The two dark creatures, the Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie, were simultaneously summoned by Han Shuo. The Little Skull's bones were as translucent as jade, and a faint spiritual light circulated within his purple demon eye. He stood there with the bone dagger in his hand, and actually gave off a strong killing aura. The 7 bone spurs on his back gave off an extremely sinister and dangerous feeling, as if they were 7 lethal weapons. The Earth Elite Zombie's eyes sparkled with an earthy yellow light that was the same color as his body. The armor that covered his entire body was like a thick layer of yellow earth. He was blinking his eyes at this moment, looking at Han Shuo with confusion. He seemed to be saying, "Everything's fine, why did you suddenly call me over?" From the appearance of the Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie, Han Shuo discovered that the two seemed to be constantly evolving. The Little Skull in particular gave Han Shuo an indescribable feeling. He always felt that after his intelligence was unlocked, his actions became more and more assertive, as if he already had a strange momentum. "I'll give you a mission. Dig out 49 holes of various sizes in this area according to my wishes. In addition, use ditches to connect the holes." Han Shuo mused for a moment and spoke to the Earth Elite Zombie, who was blinking his eyes. The well-behaved Earth Elite Zombie nodded naively, blinking his eyes at Han Shuo. However, he didn't immediately take action, seeming to wait for Han Shuo's more specific instructions. Han Shuo immediately reacted after staring blankly. He sat down cross-legged and organized his memories in his mind. His brain was like a marvelous machine, first projecting the entire area of the place of extreme wood into his mind. He then divided the 49 holes of various sizes according to Chu Kanglin's memories, placing them on the scene of the place of extreme earth in his mind. When Han Shuo finished all this, he had a complete picture of the entire scene in his mind. He then issued an order, and the Earth Elite Zombie immediately descended into the ground. Suddenly, the ground of the entire place of extreme wood began to churn violently, as if a wriggling earth dragon was continuously moving about underground. In the blink of an eye, the earth quaked and the mountains swayed. Mounds of earth appeared one after another. The Earth Elite Zombie's body was like a small dragon wantonly tossing and turning in the surging waves of the ocean. Every time he emerged from the earth, a hole of various sizes would appear. Accompanied by loud rumbling sounds, the Earth Elite Zombie used a miraculous method to perform a feat that even the most skilled construction worker couldn't accomplish. He completely relied on his own strength and natural control of the yuan energy of Earth to perfectly construct the scene in Han Shuo's mind. In the short span of half an hour, the entire ground of the place of extreme would had undergone earth-shattering changes. 49 caves of various sizes appeared, not one more or one less. Hundreds and thousands of gullies connected the 49 caves like a winding mountain range. There wasn't the slightest difference from the scene in Han Shuo's mind. It was exactly the same. Only the Earth Elite Zombie, who had reached the pinnacle of mastery of the yuan energy of Earth, would be able to accomplish such a feat in such a short amount of time and with the strength of a single person. Miraculous, truly miraculous. This fellow is too amazing. Gilbert looked at the Earth Elite Zombie with wide eyes. In such a short amount of time, he'd created such earth-shattering changes. He looked at the Earth Elite Zombie as if he'd seen a ghost and praised him. Now you know how amazing it is. The Earth Elite Zombie is the darling of the Earth. As an assassin, he can hide underground and escape through the earth if his attack fails. Even if someone dodges his attack, they won't be able to catch him. Han Shuo laughed heartily and looked askance at Gilbert. After completing all this, the Earth Elite Zombie's body rose from the last large hole. The thick earth was like air, unable to obstruct his body in the slightest. It was as if he'd floated out of the water, creating a bizarre visual impact. He took out a large pile of materials from his space ring and filled the empty space in front of him, piling them up like a small mountain. Then, using his connection with the Earth Elite Zombie with the little skull, Han Shuo, together with the Earth Elite Zombie and the little skull, quickly shuttled back and forth between the large and small holes, placing the various materials that were as high as a small mountain into the holes one by one in a special order. After finishing all this, Han Shuo let out a long sigh and said, "All the materials have been placed in. Currently, only the most basic thing is left." "Why is that hole empty? Nothing has been placed in it?" Gilbert looked at everything that was happening with great interest. As soon as Han Shuo finished speaking, he looked around and discovered that in the center of the 49 holes, there was a hole the size of a person. It happened to be right next to where Han Shuo was standing, which was also the root of the oldest and tallest tree in the area. "Nonsense, that hole is the center of the formation. Naturally, only the master can enter it." Han Shuo rolled his eyes at Gilbert and casually explained. Han Shuo started chanting a magical incantation as soon as he'd finished speaking, summoning a few zombie warriors. He planned on using the same method and letting them fight it out to decide who would be the most suitable candidate to be chosen. However, just as Han Shuo was about to do so, the Earth Elite Zombie hurriedly shook his hand and walked in front of Han Shuo. He quickly blinked his earthy yellow eyes and anxiously explained something to Han Shuo. As he did so, he didn't forget to wave his hand at the little skull and communicate with the little skull with joy. It seemed that he wanted the little skull to persuade Han Shuo with him. Han Shuo was surprised. He then held his breath and focused his mind. He carefully sized up the Earth Elite Zombie and the little skull while slowly comprehending the message the two transmitted. The Earth Elite Zombie seemed to know what Han Shuo was planning to do. He constantly gestured with his hands in disagreement, then communicated with the little skull. The little skull also seemed to suddenly come to his senses and joined the resistance with the Earth Elite Zombie. A short and chaotic message was continuously transmitted from the two to Han Shuo's mind. After a while, Han Shuo looked at the two in amazement and asked, "You mean you two will choose a suitable person?" The Earth Elite Zombie and Little Skeleton both nodded ferociously as soon as he'd finished speaking. The little skeleton walked up to the zombie warriors and clenched his bony claws into fists, pounding them with a series of crackling sounds. The zombie warriors that Han Shuo had summoned were all beaten into a prostrate position on the ground. Then, the little skull stood in front of the zombie warriors and proudly gestured something with his head held high and chest puffed out. It seemed to be saying that these guys weren't good enough and that they weren't worthy of such magical treatment. Han Shuo looked for a while and finally understood. He nodded and said with a smile, "All right, I'll send you two back. I'll give you a few minutes. Then, you two grab a zombie warrior of your choice and I'll try to summon you two together." The little skull and the Earth Elite Zombie nodded vigorously in unison when they heard Han Shuo's words. Han Shuo could feel the joy and excitement in their hearts. Han Shuo laughed involuntarily and gave them a reminder. He chanted an incantation and sent the two fellows back to their homes. His heart was full of surprise, as he hadn't thought that the little skeleton and Earth Elite Zombie would have such strange reactions. How can such low-level dark creatures possess intelligence? Gilbert was baffled as he looked at Han Shuo and sighed. Next time, don't talk about low-level dark creatures in front of them. Otherwise, they'll definitely be angry and might even beat you up. Now that they've surpassed the scope of dark creatures, I think that even high-level dark creatures may not possess such magical powers. Han Shuo glanced at Gilbert and warned the nonsensical Gilbert. After a while, Han Shuo sensed the little skull's call from an extremely distant plane. He chanted necromancy magic again and began to summon the two who had just left. A beam of light flashed by. The little skull and the Earth Elite Zombie were carrying a thin and tall zombie warrior that looked like a bamboo pole. The zombie's face was dark green, and there was no light in its white pupils. It was obvious that it only possessed the simplest of obedience. The little skull and the Earth Elite Zombie were carrying the thin and weak zombie warrior at their waists. One shoulder was higher than the other, and the other was lower. Their silly expressions were quite comical. To Han Shuo's surprise, the little skull pointed at the thin and tall zombie warrior and gestured with one hand as if to say, "He's one of us." Chapter 230. Han Shuo was stunned for a moment. He stared blankly at the tall and thin zombie warrior, then his eyes shifted between Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie. Finally, he asked in amazement, "One of us? One of you?" Nodding their heads in unison, Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie looked rather pleased with themselves. They gestured something at Han Shuo with their empty hands, and pieces of messy information were transmitted into Han Shuo's mind like electric waves. After a while, Han Shuo sorted out the pieces of information and his heart was filled with shock. He looked at the two little fellows in disbelief and exclaimed, "You're saying that you have your own subordinates and forces in another world?" The two fellows puffed out their chests at the same time, their expressions extremely pleased. They looked as if they were cackling and nodding. It was obvious that Han Shuo had hit the nail on the head. On the other side, Dark Dragon Gilbert watched as Han Shuo slowly communicated with the two creatures. He also felt that it was unimaginable and couldn't help but let out an "eh" to express his astonishment. After recovering from his shock, Han Shuo quickly thought about it and couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Not bad, not bad. You've done a good job." With Han Shuo's current understanding of necromancy magic, he clearly knew that as he continued to improve, he would one day be able to directly pass through the constraints of space and descend to that magical plane with Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie. In addition, if Han Shuo reached the realm of a sacred Magus necromancer, he could even set up a large-scale transportation matrix to directly connect to the two worlds outside and transport soldiers. If Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie developed a powerful force in another plane, when Han Shuo's necromancy magic reached a certain level, he would be able to share resources. This made Han Shuo very excited. Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie were overjoyed to hear Han Shuo's praise. Little Skull pointed at the zombie warrior he was carrying, then at the hole beside him, indicating that Han Shuo would use this zombie warrior to refine it into a wood elite zombie that could use wood energy. Nodding his head, Han Shuo smiled to express his understanding. He waved at Little Skull, indicating that he should drop the thin and tall zombie warrior into the hole. When Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie carried the zombie warrior to the hole, Little Skull put it down and raised his head to look at the zombie warrior. The purple light in his purple demon eye flickered continuously, as if he was issuing some order to the zombie warrior. After a while, Little Skull stood on his tiptoes and patted the zombie warrior's shoulder comically, like a general encouraging his subordinates, conveying the message of, "Do a good job." The thin and tall zombie warrior seemed to only have the intelligence to obey. After receiving the order from the purple demon eye, it nodded clumsily and stiffly, as if it understood Little Skull's meaning. It jumped into the hole and laid down obediently, looking at Han Shuo with eager eyes, waiting for Han Shuo's next move. Seeing that everything was in place, Han Shuo took a deep breath and dripped 2 drops of blood essence into the zombie warrior's body with practiced ease. He then released a seal of darkness magic to form a deeper connection with the zombie warrior. Afterwards, Han Shuo sat down cross-legged and gave an order to the Earth Elite Zombie. Rays of black light shot out from his hand and fell into the zombie warrior's body. Upon receiving Han Shuo's order, the Earth Elite Zombie leapt into the soil as if diving into the water, disappearing in an instant like a loach. All that could be seen was an earth dragon wriggling around the entire scene. The 49 holes were quickly covered up and became flat, exactly the same as before. When Han Shuo's last few hand seals fell into the body of the thin and tall zombie warrior, the soil around the hole seemed to be attracted by some kind of power, covering the zombie warrior's body in an extremely short amount of time. Then, the Earth Elite Zombie rose up from the ground and even clapped his hands, revealing an expression that said it was a piece of cake. "Wood Aura, obey my command and return immediately." Han Shuo formed a seal with both hands and roared. A ball of black light fell into the place where the thin and tall zombie warrior was. All of a sudden, the 49 caves that had been restored to their original state seemed to be connected by many green natural threads, forming a dense web that looked like it had been weaved by spiders. At the center of the web was the place where the tall and thin zombie warrior was hiding. In an instant, the rich Earth Yuan energy seemed to be connected by the many green ribbons, as all of it converged towards the center of the zombie. From afar, it looked like many small streams were converging towards the river in the center, giving off a strong visual impact. Some of the verdant weeds in the furthest distance slowly withered and turned yellow. Even the originally sturdy branches of the largest old tree seemed to slowly undergo changes that were difficult to see with the naked eye due to the loss of the earth aura. All of this was absorbed by the thin and tall zombie warrior in the center. For the sake of his existence, all of the surrounding greenery would eventually wither and die. This is truly miraculous. Master, how did you do this? Dark Dragon Gilbert couldn't help but exclaim as he looked at the enormous changes that had taken place in the entire scene. All of the plants in the surroundings of the place of extreme will have to spit out the earth aura that they have absorbed over the years. The day the wood elite zombie takes form will also be the day their branches and leaves wither and turn yellow. They will be completely finished. Survival of the fittest. Every living thing in this environment is survival of the fittest. This is their fate. Han Shuo said callously. Gilbert looked around and finally fixed his gaze on the Earth Elite zombie and the little skull. What do we do now? Nothing. We'll leave this place and make a trip to the Forest Troll's residence. This place is guarded by the Forest Troll warriors, so there shouldn't be any problems. The changes here will become more and more obvious as time passes. I'll instruct the Forest Troll not to worry about it. When that zombie absorbs the wood aura here and becomes a wood elite zombie, he will naturally contact me. When that happens, I'll come over and wake him up. Han Shuo explained faintly. Together with the little skull, Gilbert and the Earth Elite zombie, they left the perimeter of the place of extreme wood and headed straight for the village where the Forest Troll resided. After spending half a day, they arrived at the Forest Troll's village. The arrival of Han Shuo and the little skull caused the Forest Troll's village to be brimming with a festive atmosphere. As their guardian deity, the little skull had already been seen as the embodiment of the great goddess Daoism in this world. The successful robbery last time, as well as Han Shuo's large financial support for daily necessities, had caused the Forest Troll to trust Han Shuo even more. The old priest of the Forest Troll arrived in front of Han Shuo after a while with the help of his subordinates. He knelt down and kowtowed to Han Shuo and the little skull. Hi, how have you been? Han Shuo asked with a smile after letting the old priest rise. Under your wise guidance, we have enough rations to survive this winter. No merchants are willing to pass through the dark forest in the cold weather, so we've all been resting in the village and haven't gone out to hunt. The old priest responded respectfully, his expression somewhat relaxed. Nodding his head, Han Shuo said in a harmonious voice, "Very good. Train well this winter and cultivate stronger warriors and priests for the race. When spring comes next year, you'll be able to put them to good use. We will definitely listen to the messenger's orders and train those children well." The old priest nodded and promised Han Shuo. Yes, during this period of time, send more warriors to protect the sacred ground. The great goddess Daoism may be recuperating inside for a period of time. Don't enter the sacred land without my orders. Everything that happens in the sacred land is caused by the great goddess Daoism. Don't make a fuss about it. Han Shuo knew that the formation of the wood elite zombie would certainly cause changes in the area. He had to inform them in advance just in case the old priest and the others didn't understand the situation and disrupt Han Shuo's arrangements. Don't worry, we'll definitely follow the messenger's orders and guard the area closely. The old priest didn't ask for the reason and directly made a solemn vow. The old priest appeared quite relaxed when he didn't have to worry about food or clothing. All right then. If there are any further instructions, I may come personally, or I may have this fellow pass it on. Heh, I think you know who he is? Han Shuo smiled and pointed at Gilbert beside him. Of course, this is the powerful Mr. Dark Dragon, your humble servant. The old priest had been with Han Shuo during their last trip to the underground world. He had seen very clearly how the Dark Dragon had submitted and made a contract with Han Shuo. He naturally understood the origins of Dark Dragon Gilbert. Seeing that everything that needed to be explained had been clearly explained, Han Shuo didn't say anything else and left the forest troll's village. After sending Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie back home, Han Shuo rode Gilbert into the depths of the dark forest. There was a mysterious race in the depths of the dark forest, an extremely powerful and terrifying existence. Of course, such a place would naturally have even more ferocious magical beasts, some wondrous plants, and some legendary treasures. Han Shuo planned on refining pills, so he wanted to try his luck in the depths of the dark forest. He wanted to see if he could find some wondrous spirit herbs and replenish some of his basic ingredients. After flying for a while on the dark dragon, Gilbert took the initiative to put Han Shuo down. He actually cried out with lingering fear, "There's really something wrong with this dark forest. I suddenly felt a chill run down my spine just now, as if something was treating me as prey. This is too inconceivable." "Your feeling should be correct. Just now, I also felt a very powerful aura lock onto the two of us. However, I have no way of knowing where this powerful presence came from. It looks like this dark forest is indeed mysterious beyond compare. Let's not fly in the air, lest we attract the attention of some powerful creatures." When Han Shuo had felt that powerful presence, he had immediately released the 3 Yin demons to scout the surroundings. However, Han Shuo had no way of identifying where this presence had come from. The 3 Yin demons circled the surroundings and didn't discover anything out of the ordinary. This not only didn't make Han Shuo relax, but instead made Han Shuo even more cautious. Strangely, the depths of the dark forest didn't seem to be affected by the cold winter. The frigid winds disappeared as the two ventured deeper, and the temperature also gradually rose. It was a bit similar to the scene in the place of extreme wood. This place was lush and verdant, with ancient trees reaching the sky and dense shrubs. Springs gurgled along the way, and a few hot springs were scattered everywhere, with white mist rising in spirals. With the help of the Yin demon's vision, Han Shuo saw all kinds of ferocious high-level magical creatures appear continuously in some places. Harpies, deep-water venom pythons, frost eagles, medusae, manticores, these rare high-level magical creatures continuously appeared in the Yin demon's vision. Sometimes, it wasn't just one or two. These high-level magical creatures were rarely seen in the outskirts of the dark forest. Often, there would only be one of these high-level magical creatures in a large area. Ordinary adventurers would flee in panic when they encountered them, deathly afraid of being ambushed. However, in the depths of the dark forest, they had become the most common of existences, and were no longer so rare and peculiar. In some special places, there were many strange flowers and plants that Han Shuo had never heard of or seen before. These strange flowers and plants grew enormous flower buds. Han Shuo saw through the Yin demons that a windblade wolf would twist miraculously when it passed by a flower bud, instantly sucking the windblade wolf's body into its stamen. The thick roots chewed and sucked like a neck, quickly digesting the windblade wolf amidst the thick blood. Not even the bones were spat out. There were also some strange plants whose branches and leaves intertwined like human hands. They also possessed terrifying destructive power. Once a magical creature approached them, it would be wrapped around by their thick branches and strangled to death bit by bit. Follow me and be careful. There are dangers everywhere in the dark forest. No wonder Trunks kept telling me that although the rewards would be greater the deeper we go, we could also lose our lives at any time. Han Shuo moved forward carefully and spoke calmly to Gilbert. However, Han Shuo himself lost his cool as soon as he'd finished speaking. His body shot out with a whoosh and he rushed towards something with a face full of joy. Chapter 231. Within a crack in a fiery red rock, there was a plant with a large leaf the size of a cattail leaf, its entire body glowing with a translucent red light. At this moment, the strange plant with only one large leaf was dripping drop after drop of a blood-red liquid. This liquid was translucent and as dazzling as red diamonds. However, as soon as it landed on the rock, it squeaked and emitted a blurry red mist. The mist dissipated at the roots, as if absorbed by the roots. Han Shuo's body was faster than Gilbert had expected. In the blink of an eye, he had bent over and opened his mouth, facing the dripping drops of red liquid. Drip, drip. The blood-red liquid landed on the tip of Han Shua's tongue, emitting a soft sound. Every time a cloud of red mist rose with a squeak, Han Shua would take a deep breath and inhale the mist into his body. Then, under Gilbert's gaze, Han Shua's cheeks gradually turned red. For some reason, Gilbert looked at Han Shua in astonishment. Looking at Han Shua's strange actions, he felt that this master of his was becoming more and more mysterious. As drops of translucent blood dripped from the large leaf, the originally vigorous plant slowly began to take on a deep red color. It slowly fell onto the fiery red rock, merging with the color of the rock. When the large leaf the size of a cattail leaf stopped dripping the bright red liquid, this peculiar plant seemed to have turned into a hard rock and actually stuck to the rock below. At this moment, the skin all over Han Shua's body became a bloody red. He immediately sat down where he was, looking like a man of blood. There was also a faint red mist curling around his body. After about an hour, Han Shua slowly opened his eyes and let out a long, hearty howl. He said in high spirits, "The depths of the dark forest are indeed mysterious and unfathomable. To be able to find this blood essence grass that can increase one's blood essence, it looks like my luck is pretty good." "What's that?" Gilbert looked at the plant that looked like it had turned into a rock and asked in surprise. The blood essence grass is a kind of evil plant. After it takes shape, it will constantly absorb the vitality of the surrounding plants. If the surrounding plants are man-eating evil plants, then the blood of these man-eating plants will be absorbed and refined through its rhizome. This process would last for 100 years. Only then would the blood essence grass grow a leaf the size of a cattail leaf. Once the leaf was formed, it would spit out the solidified blood that it had absorbed and refined for 100 years. Through its rhizome, the solidified blood would be absorbed again and completely fused with its rhizome. This would allow it to absorb the surrounding yuan qi faster and cover a greater distance. After another 100 years, the blood essence grass would absorb the essence qi of the surrounding man-eating plants and grow another leaf, repeating the process over and over again. If the blood essence grass can successfully evolve 9 times for 900 years, then it will become a blood essence that can move at will and possess intelligence like a human. All the plants within a 10-mile radius will be under its control and possess incredible powers. Han Shua smiled and explained the origin of the blood essence grass to Gilbert. "So powerful? Then what effect does the blood-like liquid have on you? How many years does this blood essence grass have?" Gilbert asked in surprise after hearing Han Shua's explanation. Laughing proudly, Han Shua said, "After I absorb and refine the essence of this blood essence grass, it can directly transform my blood into blood essence with special effects. This will save me a lot of demonic yuan. Unfortunately, this blood essence grass seems to only have a lifespan of 300 years. If it had a lifespan of 900 years, after being transformed into my lifeblood essence, it would have the miraculous effect of bringing the dead back to life. Once my body is cut, it would heal at a speed visible to the naked eye." So miraculous! Perhaps there are other blood essence grasses in the dark forest. We can look for them. Gilbert was dazed for a while and then exclaimed excitedly. Ignoring the excited Gilbert, Han Shua summoned the demon's lair edge and carefully cut open the fiery red rock that the blood essence grass was entrenched in. He dug up the surrounding soil and finally put the fiery red rock into his space ring. "What use does this rock have?" Gilbert asked curiously. "This is a blood essence stone. It's a very precious material for refining weapons and has many uses." Han Shua knew that Gilbert wouldn't understand if he explained too much, so he answered carelessly. Looking around, Han Shua didn't see anything else worth paying attention to. He then walked deeper into the forest with Gilbert, becoming more and more curious about the dark forest. However, after walking for a while, that powerful presence appeared again, causing Han Shua to frown involuntarily and stop where he was. "Who is it or what is it? Are you done?" Han Shua shouted rudely as he looked around coldly. A being with such a powerful presence and able to avoid the detection of the 3 demons, Even if it wasn't human, it must possess intelligence. Such a powerful being seemed to think of him and Gilbert as its prey. This feeling made Han Shuo feel very uncomfortable, and he couldn't help but shout. There was no response. The forest was silent. After listening for a while, there were no additional sounds. It looked like the powerful being hadn't responded to Han Shuo's words. There's really something following us. Gilbert also instinctively sensed danger and couldn't help but say. Nodding, Han Shuo said softly, "That's right. I don't know what it is, but even I have no way of discovering its tracks. It looks like it's a powerful fellow. We need to be careful and not give it a chance to take advantage of us." No matter what this being was, if it had the confidence to deal with Han Shuo and Gilbert, it wouldn't be hiding in the shadows like this. It might have used a strong offensive from the start to defeat Han Shuo and Gilbert. This method of hiding meant that this powerful being didn't have the confidence to face the two of them head-on. It was precisely because of this that Han Shuo didn't seem particularly flustered. With the existence of the three Yin demons, it was completely unrealistic for this being to ambush them without making a sound. Therefore, although he was on guard, Han Shuo wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he was filled with curiosity and decided to lure out this powerful being and see just what it was. Deep in the night, the clear moonlight shone down. The shadows of the towering ancient trees were reflected on the ground under the moonlight, like the figures of demons baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Han Shuo and Gilbert were together on the branch of a 10-meter-tall tree. Gilbert leaned lazily against the tree and dozed off, looking like he'd already fallen into a deep sleep. Han Shuo's body was ramrod straight, his breathing even and heartbeat slow, like a standing javelin. He sat cross-legged on the branch with his eyes closed, silently digesting the essence of the blood essence grass he'd absorbed during the day. After who knew how long, Han Shuo, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes shone brightly in the dark night as he surveyed his surroundings. The three Yin demons circled around Han Shuo's back and arms, observing all abnormalities in their surroundings. One of the Yin demons on Han Shuo's back suddenly discovered ripples in the middle of a pool not far away. Then, a huge transparent water figure slowly floated out of the pool. This water silhouette was enormous, no smaller than Gilbert's dragon form. Its enormous body had 9 slender, monstrous heads. After it emerged from the water, the originally faint and transparent water silhouette gradually became more and more indistinct, finally completely disappearing. However, an enormous aura faintly emanated from that direction. It was exactly the same as what Han Shuo had sensed over the past 2 days. Han Shuo observed for a while and discovered that the direction of the wind in that area had clearly become a bit strange, as if it had encountered an obstruction in the air. He nudged Gilbert, startling the sleeping dragon awake. He turned his head to look at his surroundings before asking in a small voice, "What did you discover?" "It's the super-rank magical beast, the Hydra," Han Shuo exclaimed softly. Gilbert's expression changed greatly at these words. He said in shock, "No wonder. According to my grandfather, the Hydra can skillfully use the power of water to cover its body, preventing others from seeing its whereabouts and entering a wondrous state of invisibility. The Hydra's entire body is filled with poison, and it also possesses great power. I didn't think that it would actually target the two of us. This Hydra should have only evolved once. No wonder it didn't dare to act rashly even though it had its eyes on us. Get ready, we'll show it what we're made of." Han Shuo exclaimed softly, his body remaining motionless as he continued to sit there, waiting for the Hydra's arrival. Gilbert understood and pretended to continue sleeping, letting out light snores from his mouth. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, martial world, and tales of demons and gods.